say if we'll only avoid any confrontation with the enemy, he'll forget his evil ways and learn to love us.
I am confused. Being philosophically consistent and being a very honest person, I'm sure you can tell me where God came from.
That you're thinking of the wrong, obviously it displays that you're thinking of the wrong God. Because the God of the Bible is not affected by time, space, or matter. If he's affected by time, space, or matter, he's not God.
This is the Philosophically Poetic Show. Right here on FM.
What is happening? What it do? What it does? You are tuned into Philosophically Poetic right here on Active FM with your girl Nalzi Lee, and we have been discussing a whole lot of philosophical topics. So make sure that if you have listened to the show but not any of the other shows, you go back, because trust me, the heat that we have been discussing is just a little too much. But make sure you get to those other shows and listen to them. We did a whole series on atheism and arguments against atheism, and now we went into morality and where you find morality, and now we are speaking all things knowledge. And now, for me, I know I promised you guys a juicy show this week, because we're speaking about one of the arguments that Descartes came up with that I wasn't too happy with. Not his argument per se, but I wasn't happy with how it was taught. And we are going to get into that just a little, but not right now. But before we get into the hype of everything. So while we're discussing all of these things to do with knowledge, it has really hit me how many people that think they know actually don't know. Because where do you find knowledge? And do they have the right means to find knowledge? Do they have the right conception of knowledge? Many of these people that are in these philosophical debates and stuff about the truth, and they know the truth, they know what happens, everything to do with the truth, they are actually deceived. And I want to speak a little more about that as well, just a little later on in the show. So make sure that you have your popcorn ready, you have your whatever ready, your tea ready, your juice ready, your water ready, or if you're in your car and you're listening to this, listen, wherever you are, make sure you get situated, because this is about to be a hot show. But it cannot be a hot show without hot music. So we are going to go into the tunes right now, and this one is called Destination by Active Worship. Let's go.
Hi everybody, this is Ashley from Reactive, the vocalist. Radio has never been better, so stay tuned.
No longer broken, I walk in your spoken word. Evil overthrown,
only king. Destined for heaven, I'm going in. Heaven is real, it's not a thing. Caring, love, limitless. Faith is the basis, I'm gonna win. This race is my game, yes, I'm on a team. Working in purpose, I'm jumping in. Your Holy Spirit is guiding me. Purpose is driven to infinity. Heaven is our destination, Jesus is the only one. Heaven is our destination, Jesus is the only one. Ah.
You're listening to Active FM. Yeah, man.
That was Destination by Active Worship, just speaking about where our destination is at. But now the philosopher would argue and say, how do you know that your destination is heaven? How do you know that there even is a heaven? How do you even know that you're going to heaven? Do you even know that you read somewhere in a book that heaven is real, that heaven exists? Listen, there are a whole bunch of arguments around this, and there are many things that we can debate about, but the truth of the matter is that you won't really know anything unless you know the truth. Now, this argument that I was speaking about, and just to go back to what I was speaking about a bit of last week, Descartes basically was saying that we cannot know that we know anything because it's either we could be being deceived, which is something I've just spoken about briefly now, or we could actually be dreaming, or we could be a brain that is being tested on, that is being manipulated to thinking that we know what we know. And now, from these arguments, he came up with a whole bunch of theses, and one of the main ones was, I think, therefore I am. So in the moment that you are thinking something, you can, without a doubt, 100% say that in that moment you exist, because the act of thinking, the cognitive act of thinking, cannot be done if there is no entity doing the thinking. So just to speak of it, just in layman's terms, just to say that you cannot think if there's nothing thinking. So nothing can't think, and animals can't have that reasoning function as well, because only humans have that reasoning function. So in the moment that you are thinking and doubting that you believe that you exist, you actually exist in that moment. And that is where the argument basically stemmed from. Now, to lead on from this argument, Descartes went a little deeper. And this is the argument that I was, guys, up in arms against. Because I was like, but that's such a nice argument. Why are they doing this to Descartes? Free Descartes! Leave Descartes alone! But basically the way it was taught from a place of doubt. And that's the thing. You know, if you go into philosophy, if you go into these things and you're not strong in your faith, it will really make you waver. It will really make you question everything, your entire existence. Because if you're not strong in your faith, the moment someone says something, you're already shaking, you're already quivering, your whole world is already falling apart. So before you want to delve into philosophy, obviously this show, I make it plain and I tell you the truth. But before you delve into philosophy, make sure that your faith is strong. Make sure that you have a deep connection and a deep relationship with God. And make sure that you pray as well. I know one of the things that I had to do the most was actually pray and say, you know what, God, I'm about to start learning all of this stuff. And this stuff is going to come against your word. This stuff is going to come against you. And I actually don't want to stop believing in you. God, please let it not be an option that I lose my faith. Please, God, keep me strong in my faith. And ever since I prayed that, man, I can say, no matter what has been taught and how it's been taught, I have found myself standing firm on my belief system. I found myself standing firm on God and not even being able to be moved. And that's the thing. If you are someone who's not strong in your faith, you'll easily be shaken. The Bible does say that what's shakeable will be shaken. So make sure before you go into university, or if you already are in university, just pray to God and ask him to help you, that your faith would not quiver, because it's not only in philosophy, man. I mean, every single subject we go into in university, and we call them modules, obviously, or courses. Every single course I take, there is some reference to God and why you shouldn't believe in God and stuff. And if you're not strong in your faith, you're going to find yourself actually doubting. So I want to say it's very important that you make sure that your faith is strong. But now in his 5th meditation, and he basically wrote meditations because he would sit down and think about stuff, and then he'd be like trying to figure stuff out. I know I usually have moments where I just sit down and I think, and I'm like, but why? And then I lead on to, so basically in his meditations, he'd write down. And now in his 5th meditation and elsewhere, Descartes says that God exists, following from the fact that existence is contained in the true and immutable essence, nature, or form of a supremely perfect being, just as it follows from the essence of a triangle that is angles equal to 2 right angles. And if you are like Nolzi, you just spoke gibberish. Like, what are you saying? It's basically saying that God exists, following from the fact that your true and immutable essence, so your essence, your being, your nature, your form, and this form of a supremely perfect being follows just as you would say that a triangle has 2 equal right angles in it, or something like that. And I just want to read to you his meditation, and this is what Descartes says. And undoubtedly, the ideas which represent substances to me amount to something more, and so to speak, contain within themselves more objective reality than the ideas which merely represent modes or accidents. Again, the idea that gives me my understanding of a supreme God certainly has in it more objective reality than the ideas that represent finite substances. Now, it is manifest by the natural light that there must be at least as much reality in the efficient and total cause as in the effect of that cause. For where, I ask, could the effect get its reality from? If not from the cause, and how could the cause give it to the effect unless it possessed it? It follows from this that both something cannot arise from nothing, and also that what is more perfect, that is, contains in itself more reality, cannot arise from what is less perfect. And that is his meditation. And basically, I'm going to break this down a little bit more in the next segment. But basically, in his meditations, he's speaking about an existence of a God. And this is what infuriated me. As we're learning this in class, our lecturer is basically teaching it as if Descartes was like a madman. He's literally making it sound like this guy is stupid. And then the whole class erupts in this debate and argument and laughter and stuff. And one of the girls actually says that that cannot be totally incorrect, what Descartes has just said. And then the class begins to go off at her, and they're like, no, and this and that. And you know, the way philosophy is taught is so anti-God. And I saw it in that lecture where I was like, but why have we given all of his other ideas so much weight and so much power? I mean, when we were learning about the meditations and you cannot know that you know, the lecturer was like basically teaching it from the perspective of this guy knows what he is saying, and he was teaching it from a perspective of this is so important and whatever and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden we move on to God exists. All of a sudden, Descartes, what is he saying? Does he even know what he's saying? And all of this stuff. And that's what made me mad. Not what Descartes says in itself, but how it was taught to us. And that's why I'm saying it's very important that you make sure that your faith is strong. Because if it isn't, just as everyone else is swayed in class, and just as everyone else is like going off against these ideas of Descartes, you will be swayed as well. And I just want to break down to you just a little more of what Descartes is saying. But before we go into that, we are going to go into some hot music, because what is a hot show without hot music? I think It doesn't even make sense. Does that even? No, it can't make sense. So we are gonna go into Oh No by Reactive, because oh no, you didn't not know this song. Oh no. Let's go.
From the beginning, you're still the one for him. And even though you've sinned, he shed his blood for you. Oh no, you didn't. Oh no. So I keep chasing you, difficult, but I'm pacing through. Your arms are all I'm racing to. I found my place in you. Feed me with the bread of life. Same word, but it's tasting you. I'm always embracing you. Hope my life stays in you. You got one for me. No need to be chasing two. In your arms you wrap me. Trapped but now I'm set free. Thank you, Lord. You restore my sanity. So I keep chasing you. Difficult but I'm pacing through.
Surrender and trust Him. He'll never let you down. Run into His arms. And even though you sin, He shed His blood for you.
Oh no, you did it. You can't just run from him. Loved you from the beginning. You're still the one for him. And even though you sin, he shed his blood for you. Oh no, you did it. Oh no.
Once upon a time I entered the perfect love story. Then from a miracle working Father, loyal always, loves more than words can say. His love never quits. They rescued from the trampoline pool. He is madly in love with me. Surrender and trust Him. He'll never let you down. Run into His arms, and even though you sin, He shed His blood for you.
Oh no, you did it. You can't just run from him. Loved you from the beginning. You're still the one for him. And even though you sin, he shed his blood for you. Oh no, you did it. Oh no.
He shed His blood for you.
Rapid Trade is passionate about mobility and solutions that make a difference in your business. From mobile sales and sales management to van sales and proof of delivery. For a demo, call Rapid Trade on 011-493-9755. Rapid Trade, ahead of the game.
So that was Oh No by Reactive, and I basically love that song. I love rap music. If anything, from the time I did the show Rhymes and Poetry to now doing Philosophically Poetic, hip-hop music has always been something that I have loved. I mean, just a quick story. So when I was in primary school, I literally was in a hip-hop dancing group. Guys, we used to cramp our lives away. We used to be the hip-hop squad of the school, and everybody knew that squad was the hip-hop squad of the school. And literally, we would do dance challenges. We would come up with routines. Where we performed these routines, don't ask me, because I also don't know. We performed them nowhere. But we would be serious at work as if it's a job, creating these dance routines. Listen, it was a real thing. We were legit like the Rapporteurs, which was a very famous group here, dance group in general, or we were a crew, guys. We were an entire crew. But anyway, back to philosophy and back to talking all things Descartes. What Descartes is saying in this meditation is this. And I want you guys to understand this from the perspective he's saying it, and then I'll tell you how it was argued in my class, and then basically just give you guys some thoughts on what I think. So he says that we cannot have an effect without a cause. So he's basically looking at us, human beings and the world, as the effect, what has happened after. And he says, how can we have this without a cause? How can we have the universe just appear out of nowhere? How can we say that there is no actual cause to this universe? Then he goes on to say that when we're looking at this, we certainly can see that we need to find the cause of what has happened. How can we have a cause without an effect? So the universe is the cause, the effect is who? And basically he says that unless it is possessed by someone, they cannot bring into effect something that they don't have. So we cannot have this idea of perfection. We cannot have this idea of striving towards perfection if a perfect being did not put that in us. And the perfect being could not have put that idea of perfection in us if that perfect being in himself or in its entity is not perfect. So this idea of perception and this conceptual idea of perfection, constantly reaching and striving for perfection, how can we say that we have this idea of perfection if no perfect being exists? And he goes on to basically say that the mere fact that I exist and have within me the idea of the most perfect being, that is God, provides a very clear proof that God exists. He says, it is no surprise that God, in creating me, should have placed the idea in me to be, as it were, the mark of the craftsman's stamped on his work. So this idea that we have of this higher being, this idea that we have of perfection, how could it have come from nowhere is basically what Descartes is saying. How can we possibly believe and make ourselves believe that we have just come into effect and now all of a sudden we've got this idea of perfection, but at the same time this idea of perfection just was generated by our own minds? And he's saying, how would we make up this idea of perfection? How could we? If we don't know any perfection, how could we make it up? And the only way he could see that we could know perfection is if a perfect being placed the idea of perfection in us. Now, in class, they were basically like, nah, that's stupid. Obviously, we can look at our own ideas. And this is one of the arguments that came against him. He says, if a weak man wants to have an idea of a strong man, the weak man doesn't have the strength, but all he has to do is multiply his abilities times maybe 100 to get to what the idea of a strong man is. So this guy who is not strong just has to think of himself times 100 to come up with a strong man. Now, this is what they were saying in class, and they were basically saying that that's a stupid argument, and how could you come up with that argument? Now, I want us just to think of this, because this is how I think of it. We all have different ideas of what is right and what is wrong. We all have different ideas of how the world should be. We all have different ideas of what equality is, of what freedom is, of what all of these things is. But how come there is a universal idea of perfection? I mean, when it comes to perfection, there's no, this is what perfection is to me, and that is what perfection is to me. We sort of have this universal idea of perfection. Now, how can all of humanity at the same time have this idea of perfection, of a utopia, without it being brought about by something? And if you said to me equality, I'd say okay, because we all have our different ideas on equality. Some people say equality is giving women more rights. Some people say equality is basically giving women the same rights as men. Some people, we all have different ideas of equality. We all have different ideas of all these different things except perfection. And that for me made me sit back and think Descartes was actually onto something. I mean, when it comes to perfection, he recognized that this is impossible, that imperfect beings could have this idea of perfection if it didn't come from the perfect being himself. And now, if we look at the Bible basically shows us the perfection of God and teaches us the perfection of God. But how does someone that has never read the Bible know perfection if it hasn't been placed in them already by God? Just like this whole thing where people don't want to die. We actually don't want to die. In human nature, we have this nature to preserve ourselves. And how can we say that we don't have this idea of eternity? And why do we have this idea of eternity, of living forever, if that eternity has not been placed in our hearts by one who knows that he can give us eternity? And basically, I really liked this argument by Descartes, but I really hated how it was presented to us in class, because they basically made it seem like it was some stupid idea and what is he talking about and stuff, when in actual reality, I see the distinguishing, I see what Descartes was trying to speak about, and I actually fully agree with what he was saying. Now, this whole idea of knowledge, we cannot, and hear what I'm saying. We cannot have perfection unless we know who perfection is. But also, in addition to that, we cannot have knowledge if we don't know where knowledge comes from. And knowledge basically comes from Jesus. When speaking of truth and all of this stuff, which we're going to go into, Jesus basically says that he is the truth. He is the ultimate. God actually is knowledge. God knows all things. He created all things. He was there before all things. The Bible speaks about the fact that God knows, knows the number of hairs that you have on your head. And not only you, he knows the number of hairs I have on my head. He knows the number of hairs we all have on our heads. And God basically created everything. I don't know about you, but it would be stupid to think that you could create something without at least knowing something about that thing. And he created everything. So that means he knows something about everything. And not just something, he knows everything about everything. And many times we find ourselves getting into these debates and these arguments about how do we know that we know and all of this stuff. And instead of looking to the one who created all things to give us knowledge, we start looking to books, we start looking to philosophy, we start looking to maths and start looking to all of these other things instead of just going back to the one who created. I mean, I don't think Henry Ford would have been able to create a car if he knew nothing about a car. I don't even think that makes sense. I mean, that is an argument that anyone can see that is something that wouldn't make sense. How do I create something that I know nothing about? I'll give you an example. I don't know how to bake, guys. It's been a long time coming. I've tried that thing. It just hasn't worked for me. And how could I bake if I don't know how to bake? I can't. The thing is, I'll make something that's imperfect, but God has created this world perfect, and us as humans have brought imperfection into this world. And how could he have done that if he didn't know anything about it? So the first thing when we're looking for knowledge and when we're looking at where do we get knowledge and how do we get knowledge, we need to look at who knows all things and where should we be looking for this knowledge that we so desperately seek. And that is looking to God. And that's basically where I want to end this argument on knowing. And do you know that you know? Yes, you do know that you know. Why? Because God is not an evil God. He's not deceiving you. And if you don't know God, then yes, you might be being deceived by the devil, because the devil hates us. Let us speak facts. The devil hates us. And I'm gonna carry on speaking just a little more. Make sure that you don't go anywhere. See you now.
The wait is over. Hold on tight. We are in the overdrive.
Welcome. This is your favorite station. Stay tuned.
Turn up the volume. The volume.
3, 2, 1. Just wanna see the love.
Let's go.
Active FM.
Just carrying on from what I was saying just before, we just took a little breather. You know, we needed to just breathe a little. The devil hates us. And he deceives us all the time into thinking we know things. That's why you'll find people with all of these higher arguments and this and that and the next thing. It's because the devil hates us and he's constantly working at deceiving us. Now, if you don't know God, then you can say, yes, I don't know that I know anything. Because why? Because you are under the deception of the devil. And that is the deception of the evil demon that Descartes was speaking about. You can't say you know anything if you're being deceived by an evil demon, which many people in the world are being deceived by the devil, and they think that it's the truth. They think that the devil wants to provide them with wealth and success. Why would someone that was kicked, I won't even say someone, he doesn't deserve that title. Why was something that was kicked out of heaven? He lost everything. He lost his father, God. He lost everything. Why would he want to give you anything when you took everything that he wanted for himself? It's like me taking your guy or whatever, or me taking your car, or me taking all of your possessions. In fact, I come into your life and I kick you out of everything, out of your friendship circles, out of your relationship. I take your relationship, your friendship circles, I take your car, I take your house, I take your money, I take listen, I leave you with nothing on the street. And then you come to me and you tell me that you want to give me everything and you're promising me all of these things. Why would I believe you? The point is I wouldn't. In case you think maybe I would not. And the devil is basically trying to deceive us on a daily basis. So make sure that in order to say that you know anything, that first of all, you know God, because he's the one that provides us with all knowledge and all wisdom in every single circumstance and in everything that we do. But right now, we are going to close off the show. It has been another hot week right here on Active FM. This is your girl, Nalzi Lee, signing out yet for another week. Peace out and God bless you. But before God blesses you, make sure you find us on our Instagram handles, which is at ActiveFM777. Make sure that you find us on our website, which is www.activefm.co.za. Make sure that you catch me on Instagram at philosophically_poetic. Otherwise, simply find us on Facebook /Active FM. Radio has never been better. Peace out. God bless you. Bye.